it's convenient to use your Apple Pay in your phone or your watch, or and with Bitcoin it's not that easy, and it's very similar with Nostr. Like it's very easy to use WhatsApp or Instagram or Facebook to communicate and to do all the things socially. But just like with fiat money, the money in the bank is not your money, and it's not your money, and some would argue it's not yours, and it's not money. The same thing applies to Nostr and the data and your digital footprint. So in all those Web2 applications, you are the product. All the data you feed to the big corporate machines, that doesn't belong to you. Like at any point, you can be cut off, you can be cancelled from any platform, and that's where Nostr comes in place. In Nostr, you own your data. Nobody can take it away from you. Nostr allows for the content creators to be rewarded directly, so you can zap people, and that's a very slick experience. That's actually like literally giving a thumbs up to an article. You can send some value, and I think this is especially empowering because especially given the inequalities in the world. If you've got people who are smart and working hard and creating good content from countries that are not so rich, for them 21 sats, if they make it 20 times, that actually comes to be some value, and of course Bitcoin appreciates as well, so that would be worth even more. So that's one thing, and as you say, it's early days. The potential of what could be done with Nostr is just tremendous.
Hey there, and welcome back to Your Bitcoin Story, the podcast where we deep dive into people, projects, and ideas shaping the Bitcoin and decentralized tech world. I'm your host, Gigi, and today we've got a special episode lined up for you. We're joined by two fantastic guests, Eugene and Endo, who are part of the team of developers behind NostrDev.com. If you've been curious about Nostr, the open protocol for censorship-resistant communication, and you're looking for an easy way to build your very own Nostr app, this episode is for you. We'll break it down with Eugene and Endo, learn about their journey, and explore how NostrDev is empowering developers to create tools for a more open, decentralized future. Eugene and Endo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hey.
Eugene, I guess it's welcome back to the show because you've been on the show previously. So if any of the listeners want to hear the full Eugene's Bitcoin story, how did he get orange pilled and everything up to now, then I guess you can go back, scroll to one of the early episodes. And Endo, this is the first time on the show, so glad to have you on, and thanks for joining today.
My pleasure.
Perfect. So I guess, guys, we will do this episode a little bit different. As we do our weekly episodes, we open up the episode on share us kind of what is your Bitcoin story. But in this one, we will focus it more on essentially all the growth that's happening on Nostr, and of course, learning more about NostrDevs, which I think is a very interested and needed aspect at this point in time where we are with Nostr. So I guess before we jump down the deep purple rabbit hole, can you guys just do a quick introduction about yourself and tell us just in a few words about your background and essentially how you got into Bitcoin and now Nostr? So whoever wants to go first.
I'll introduce myself. Yeah, I'm Eugene. I've as you mentioned, I've been on this podcast before. I'm a software engineer. Up until very recently, I worked in pretty much traditional tech, and then I joined or kind of banded together with other people to work on NostrDev. I've been a Bitcoiner for a few years. Before that, I was into crypto. So I mean, I'm very open about it. not gonna hide anything. And I'm very passionate about Bitcoin, Nostr, and hopefully a freer future.
Amazing.
It feels like we're going to be doing this AA meetings where I was a shitcoiner.
The confessions need to be done.
Story. So it's my story exactly. Orange pill for some time and purple pill for a little less, but also very very bullish on Nostr. I'm Endo. Go by Endo Rivers. My background is actually project management, then agile coaching. I work with software development teams to build software. We used to build applications, websites, mobile apps, maybe some campaign work as well. That's back from my agency days. Most recently, more heavier on tech, like the software development pure. And with NostrDev, I've been with NostrDev only for a month now, but it's been a blast. I'm loving every day of it, and happy to be contributing to the Freedom Tech finally.
Amazing. Yeah, I was gonna say like there's no better feeling than working on freedom technology. Like maybe if the pay is not as good as perhaps yet as in the legacy markets, but like the soul is not getting crushed and sucked away, that you're kind of
Absolutely.
giving all your hard work to a system that doesn't value and essentially is just robbing and cheating the global population.
For sure.
Perfect. So I guess, guys, let's now slowly trickle down the purple orange rabbit hole. So you, Endo, you mentioned you just recently joined the NostrDevs project about a month ago. When did you, Eugene, join, and how did you come about joining the NostrDev team?
So around May last year, I decided to, I got an opportunity to join software engineering in Madeira. And I decided to take it for different reasons. Decided to leave Scotland, where I used to live, at least for now. And kind of just take up a new challenge. And there I met some people, actually there and also from not there, just from other places, who had similar expertise. We're all software developers with about 5-6 years of experience each. Had the same passion, were in a similar actually place in their lives. And so it's kind of to kind of shorten it, we kind of banded together, started working on some client projects and also our own projects. And so that kind of how it went from around July of last summer, I would say. At least that's when I joined. And since then we actually doubled in size, which is crazy.
Oh wow! You're definitely doubling up, which is a good sign. But my question is, what led you to Madeira? Was it the Adopting Bitcoin conference earlier in March of last year, or it was just randomly connecting with people online through sovereign engineers that you came through?
Yeah, so software engineering is a residency program in Madeira for engineers who want to work with Freedom Tech. So that's kind of what drew me there. And before that, I'd been in what you call legacy tech, right? In a traditional tech company for 3 years, and I felt that it was a good time to sort of challenge myself and to when there was a talk, somebody was saying, someone who has a very successful mainstream career and who recently made a transition to Bitcoin as well, but after like decades of a successful career. But he said that every few years you have to punch yourself in the face. You have to challenge yourself. You can't get too comfortable. So that was kind of I would say my state around May. And I joined software engineering, so I was surrounded by different engineers. Really kind of dove right into it when it comes to Bitcoin and Freedom Tech. And then, after a few weeks, started to become more comfortable with it.
Amazing. Well, sometimes seeking discomfort surprises us in very positive ways. If we get too comfortable in some position or environment, it's kind of a downhill slope, because like nothing's really changing. You're not challenging yourself mentally. So yeah, it's, even though it's a bit frightening, and some people prefer the other option of, hey, like I'll just stick to my boring 9 to 5 and not dabble into new experiences.
100%. I think that question is very much on my mind, because it's that dichotomy. It's like two paths,
Yeah.
And one is definitely more dangerous. I mean, relatively dangerous. The other one is less dangerous. But you mentioned the soul earlier, and I think I think when you're too comfortable, your soul starts to stagnate, even if things are going very good and you're enjoying the environment, which was the case for me.
When you say
what about
dangerous, just one quick. When you say more dangerous, is that just sleepwalking and into like a CBDC utopia where you're fully control. I mean, I call that dangerous too, right? Like not doing anything in today's world is kind of tricky, and I think a lot of people start realizing that the world is spinning fast and it doesn't really care, and there's like more and more like Orwellian scenarios coming into play. So I think it's important that those volunteers, people working in the freedom tech, that they're appreciated, and I thought like, okay, I need to chip in like whatever skills I have, and I'm not a developer myself. I have more soft skills in coaching teams and bringing the best so that the teams can do together to the space. And my challenge was that I felt that I want to contribute for a while, but it's such a fresh space, such a new space that you barely get teams bigger than 2-3 people working together. And usually these are like geniuses, super smart people who don't really say, hey, I can help you with like, you can't, mate, like this is the first reaction. But I'm super happy that actually bringing years of my experience working in like different industries and having exposure to different kind of problems and projects can be useful in this space as well. So yeah, so that's where we're at.
So yeah, definitely, I get where you're coming from, and just to chip in, there's kind of two sides to that coin. On one hand, it might be a little bit intimidating to jump into the space and start building somewhere here because there's like hardly anything built. But at the same time, that's the beauty of it as well. There's so much to be built in this new decentralized world that we're building that there's so many opportunities to get done that it's an open blank canvas where you can go and do whatever painting you want. And I'm also not a technical guy like you, Endo, and I'm doing my contribution by like utilizing my social skills through this podcast. And by the time this episode is going to go live, it's already going to be January when my big announcement is going to come out, where I'm actually going to be offering to also mentor new people entering the space. May that be buying their first on KYC stack, getting into cold storage, getting multi-sigs, setting up your own node, setting up, whatever help you need with. I kind of want to help out people to not fall down the down pits. Definitely no crypto gambling away, but also like losing your coins and not knowing what you're doing, and just like some simple security precautions that you can take when you're starting your Bitcoin journey, and of course your Nostr journey as well. So that's kind of I tell people you don't have to be a crazy programmer to contribute here. There's so many ways that you can do it that just go ahead and take the leap of faith, and it's well going to be worth it. I left my fiat job last November, so more or less just over a month ago, which was also like leaving a cushy job where you're getting a pretty decent salary every month, and it was it was a decision that I was waiting for a long time, but I kind of said, I don't want to be in this regret stage decade down the line where I'm looking back and I'm like 40 plus years old and I'm like, Gigi, why did you not like pull the trigger and leave that boring ass world and contribute full time into building and helping people escape essentially the old cabal system. So I've taken a full leap like you guys have, working full time on freedom tech. And even though it's only been quite recent, it feels already much better. So I'm only excited for everything that's to come and every way I can contribute as well. I always tell all the guests, if there's anything I can help with, I'm more than happy to contribute. I have time now, actually, taking back control. This is something that Bitcoin, to me, a strong value of Bitcoin is, there's this saying, stack sat, stay humble. There's another saying from one of the guests that I had a few months ago. He has a saying, stack sats, stack time. By more Bitcoin you have, you actually have more control over your time, which means a lot to me because time, as you said, Endo, the world is spinning very fast and we all have this is one life. We're not a GTA character where we just die and we spawn in this back in our bedroom house. I want to utilize it to the max. So yeah, it's very inspiring to hear when people are taking the full leap into working on freedom tech. So I'll cut my ramble here and I'll redirect it back to you guys. I guess some of the listeners are probably, they heard me mention NostrDev, NostrDev, NostrDev.com, but we haven't done like a TLDR. What is NostrDev? So you guys want to give like a quick summary of what is NostrDev?
Well, NostrDev is, I think I don't know if it's the first or certainly one of the first software development studio focused specifically on freedom tech. So that would be Nostr and Bitcoin. We also have some projects that are not Nostra first, but Bitcoin. So it's a team of engineers, designers. Well, we have a designer and project manager, Endo. So a team of essentially professionals working and try to deliver software in the space. That's the primarily using Nostr and Bitcoin Freedom Tech.
So from just to kind of get my own understanding, this is like someone, for example, Gigi has an idea about a Nostr client or like a Nostr app to create, and I come to you and you help me build it, or this is more for the developers. Developers have an idea and they need to execute the idea, or is it both?
I would say it's both. We've got clients who are not super technical, but they've got an idea and it's a valid technical solution. So they would come to us. We would do an introductory call where we do our discovery phase, and we come up with some architecture proposal or some solution proposal to make that happen.
Amazing. Yeah, I think, that's something really needed because as I mentioned, I have no technical background. So I don't know what it takes to build your own Nostr client. From what I understand, hanging out on Nostr, it's not too hard. It's not like opposite to like creating like a normal app, web app that you would be doing. But maybe you could break down like what's the differences between building like a Nostr app compared to a traditional app.
I mean, I'll chip in. I think it's a bit of a Wild West, or Nostra can be a little bit of a Wild West. I mean, it depends. You can go very Nostra light, where you just have a very light integration of Nostra, and that's easier to achieve. Or you can go very Nostra heavy, right? And then it becomes harder. And by harder, I mean harder to achieve good user experience, or maybe good or rather frictionless, or the kind of user experience I guess we're used to. And then that freedom tech stack has been growing, because you have something like Nostr, the protocol, which is it's a transport protocol almost, and then you have, or like messaging, and then you have a Blossom drive, which is an emerging part of that stack, which allows you to store files or blobs using your Nostr private public key. And so what I'm seeing is this very, gradual, but also quite fast process of reimagining the web app stack using Bitcoin native tech.
Okay.
But it is different. Even though we use React, we use Node.js in some projects, we use familiar tools that most developers know. But it's different in terms of, it's different conceptually because, for example, in your Nostr app, a lot of the time you'll have the client, and the client will communicate with the relay, right? That is sort of instead of the server, like in your more traditional app. And then maybe also the client will communicate with the Blossom drive instead of a database. And both of these can be bring your own. Like we can provide a relay and a Blossom drive, which is essentially storage space, but the users potentially can plug in their own relay and Blossom drives, right? And so it creates a very, very different, very new kind of experience, I would say.
Yeah, and I guess, go ahead. You wanted to chip in, Endo?
Yeah, I wanted to say that basically we also offer a bunch of like a mini services, like relay as a service, so we can help you set up your Nostra relay and make it accessible. We can help you get your Nostra address verified, like getting a tick. These are simple things, but they still require a little bit of technical knowledge. So we want to help the ecosystem grow and help people on board to this. So we help with that as well.
Yeah, you kind of answered, like I had one question following up, like in regards to relays, because like this is like a concept that especially new people entering the space, they don't really get the concept of like, well, what's a relay? And you broke it down nicely, Gene, on high level, kind of instead of having a server by a centralized app provider or like database, you can essentially run your own relay, which is like your own server. How does that, like, by you helping to run your own relay, is this like something that is hosted by the client, or how does that process go? And how easy is it to spin up a relay?
I will just fine tune it a little bit to say that relay is not quite exactly the server, right? Relay it transmits messages, Nostr
It's
or
like a bridge,
events,
basically. It's
Nostr.
like a highway,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Um, how easy? It's actually very easy to. I mean, is running a Bitcoin node easy, right? I would say it's fairly easy. So running a
Hmm.
Nostra relay is not any more difficult, probably even easier than running a Bitcoin node. And the only maybe problem, but it's the same problem with the Bitcoin node. There currently isn't, at least by and large, maybe some exceptions, but currently there isn't a massive financial incentive to run a Nostra relay, right? So it's done by
Yeah,
volunteers. There are discussions about how to make relays profitable potentially and incentivize it, but currently it's more of a volunteer kind of thing that you can do to contribute to the network. One thing I'll just add to this: any
sure.
app that you create can have its own relay, so it doesn't even necessarily need to serve the whole network, right?
Hmm.
It can do, but I can easily imagine a future where a web app has maybe its own relay, maybe some users plug in their own relay, something like that.
Interesting. And yeah, I guess with regards to like on Nostr, most people think, not they associate Nostr as like with Damus, Amethyst, like these main big first clients, and they initially think it's basically like a Twitter clone, right? You just go on and you drop your nodes, but like people don't realize like on Nostr you can build like a variety of different things, and like we have like the Zap stream and Tunester, and there's, I'm sure you guys know a lot more, but could you share about like some projects that you've been working with, or something that you're really kind of bullish in the Nostr space, which has been built over the last 12 months?
Yeah.
Uh,
Shall
you,
I jump in?
yeah,
Okay,
you
I
start, and then I'll mention.
can
Yeah.
cover some, and you can cover some as well. So we actually checked with our clients. We could mention their names, and they were happy with that. So we're building a project called SatShoot, for example, which utilizes it's a similar concept like TaskRabbit or Fiverr, where you have freelancers and you have clients posting jobs. So working for Nostr, you can take on the job, do a task, and get some sats for that. So I deeply believe that with many people and many technical people only getting understanding of Bitcoin is the next is the future. Like we need to you need to get some Bitcoin. Many people will say, shit, it's already so expensive. I can't afford to buy it, but maybe I can earn it. And in
Yeah.
countries where people not necessarily like make a lot of money, people would want to work for a few hundred or a few thousand sats to contribute their time and their skills and actually earn some sats. So there's a very, satshoot.com. It's a very promising and up and coming project. I'm super excited about it. It utilizes eCash on the back end of it. It works as a progressive web app. So it's really hard to stop for anybody who would want to stop it. And that's the idea. Yeah.
Amazing. I really like that idea. I think, having like a decentralized version of like a Fiverr, because I've used Fiverr over the years. And, I know also for the service provider, they get like a big percentage cut away from the payment that you do. So like you're paying like, let's say $5 or $10 to someone in India. And I don't know, it's like 10-15% or even more, like that gets cut away from them. And then I need to pay processing fee. Like there's so many what I call rent seekers in the middle, just taking like pinching away from this. Whereas, you could have a decentralized way where you're hiring someone for the skill and it's instant payment. There's no middleman fees. And it
Just like
progresses. It gives like
Bitcoin.
a new opportunity. Correct. Just like you pay the transaction fee and that's it. No hidden costs. Amazing. I like that.
I can add something to this, which is you actually mentioned that Nostr is associated with Damus, but you can actually build a lot of other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm actually very excited about all the other stuff. There's been a lot of discussions about how maybe Nostr can have an aspiration to build something like a decentralized identity, right, on the web, sort of the social layer of Bitcoin, that would allow people to access social services, that includes marketplaces, but other things in a way that is, I suppose, free. What I mean by free is in a way that's detached from any kind of government funded or sanctioned, rather, identity. So I think that's a kind of a lofty aspiration for Nostra, at least when I think about it, or then when people that I've discussed that with think about it. And we do have a project that, in my mind at least, fits within this context, and that is Sigit, which is an in-house built application, which is essentially a digital document signing application, right, built on Nostr, where you can utilize your Nostr identity to create, share, and sign and verify documents with other people. And so it's not a very maybe social media-ish use case for Nostr, but it's a use case precisely, I would say, an essential utility, right, required in any kind of social identity space. If you want to, I don't know, start a business, any kind of agreement, right? And you can have it verified using your Nostr identity. It works offline. So it's like that initial utility required to, I think, make a lot of things happen. And that, it uses Nostra relays, it uses Blossom Drive in some pretty, I would say, non-standard ways.
No, that's amazing. And it kind of it obsoletes the concept of like prove your identity, take a selfie like a total noob with your ID and like your proof of residence. You just have like you sign it with your Nostr identity, and it proves that you really are the person that's basically undersigning the contract. Another thing that I really love about Nostr, which some listeners that still are not yet on a Nostr protocol, like one unique a big advantage to me is that once you create your XPub and you get your NSEC, you can log into any client, no matter like who you're using, with this one login. Like your NSEC can be logged in across everywhere, and it simplifies your kind of your safekeeping. You just keep your NSEC, essentially, quote unquote, your password to enter your data, and that's it. It's not like with the Facebooks and WordPress and Calendly and everywhere you need to have your username, your password, and they always recommend that you use a different password. So you have all these like millions of passport keepers. So it just like simplifies everything so much. But my only concern is, how do we prevent ourselves from, let's say, like keeping our NSEC safe? Because like as we progress and more like, we dedicate more time to growing our Nostr profiles, and then someone gets access to it and essentially, I don't know, wipes it or damages it. Do you have that in mind? Like, how do you prevent the security aspect of that? Because it's like, it's a big positive and a negative in my personal eyes, having one login.
Okay, so it's a very good question. With great power comes great responsibility, right? So just like with Bitcoin, like if you use your seed phrase or your private key, you lose access to your Bitcoin.
Quick interruption, folks, because your seed phrase deserves better than a napkin in your sock drawer. We've partnered up with Stampseed, the legends of professional grade metal stamping tools. Their patented tools are made from solid titanium, the indestructible kind. You hammer your seed phrase letter by letter, so it's literally etched in stone. Well, titanium, but you get the idea. No loose pieces, no oops, my letter shifted around, and 0 points of failure. Perfect for wallets, multi-sig setups, or if you're planning to pass your Bitcoin empire to your kids. Mount it to a wall, stash it under a desk, or hide it like a treasure map. Use code BTCstory for a 15% off site-wide discount, because your seed phrase shouldn't be left to chance. Visit stampseed.com and order your personal stamping kit today. And now, let's get back to the episode.
The very same idea works for Nostr. Luckily, there are solutions that help mitigate some risks. So there are Nostr extensions, like browser extensions, which you can download, install in your browser, and through these extensions, you log into third-party applications, and that is actually considered a more secure way of accessing those applications, because you're not sharing your, if you're logged into a new app you haven't, that looks promising, but you haven't seen, used that before, or maybe, somebody made a clone and used some similar domain or whatever. Once they get hold of your NSEC, that's it. Your account is compromised. There's no way back.
So the extension just kind of gives you permission. It just allows you it verifies, but it doesn't share the actual NSEC with the app you're logging in.
That's right.
I like it. Well, that's a good piece of advice to the listeners. Like if once you start your Nostr journey, definitely get an extension on your browser, and definitely log into different Nostr clients with the extension. So there's one tip for you listeners. Perfect. I guess any other projects that you're excited about that either you're working on or you're seeing in the space that are currently being built on or discussed, or something that's recently launched? Because there's every other week there's new things popping up. I can't even track them myself. And it's very exciting because there's a lot of building happening, and still it's a relatively small niche. So everybody's kind of discussing and seeing, and which I feel like Nostr today is like being in Bitcoin in 2011, 12, it's only been a few years. People are like, oh, there's so many things happening. And Bitcoin today is very different than it was in the community aspect than it was over a decade ago. But that's how I feel like Nostr, it's like such a priceless time to be involved, because I think the way things are going in 5-10 years, Nostr is going to be very different. It's going to be more or less like how Bitcoin is today, adopted by nation states and the micro strategies of the world. And it's going to be a very normalized, instead of this cypherpunk movement and freedom fighters.
Well, I think it's important to mention that I think most of your listeners would already know that, but Nostr allows for the content creators to be rewarded directly, so you can zap people, and that's a very slick experience. That's actually literally giving a thumbs up to an article. You can send some value, and I think this is especially empowering, because especially given the inequalities in the world. If you've got people who are smart and working hard and creating good content from countries that are not so rich, for them 21 sats, if they make it 20 times, that actually comes to be some value. So and of course Bitcoin appreciates as well, so that would be worth even more. So that's one thing, and as you say, it's early days. The potential of what could be done with Nostr is just tremendous. We were thinking, I was actually talking to a person on Nostr who built the badges on Nostr. There's this page called badges page, and basically when you imagine if you're any IT company, I don't know, Cisco or Red Hat, that's a lot of certifications. You could actually have a Nostr profile, and you could issue those badges and send them as rewards to your to people who pass the exam, pass the certification exam, and you can award that badge to that person. Now this badge would be associated to the npub of the user, and this could be very easily foundable. You could very easily recruit people who really have the skills. Because if you go to LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm an expert
in bullshitting on CV, past experiences and credentials.
Exactly, yeah. So you can cut that out. You can actually make that truth without much need to verify that, because you can see that the issuing body or issuing institution is linked to a certain NIP5 domain. So if they're using cisco.com, it means that okay, this is a verified Cisco certificate, and yeah, it's much easier to actually verify people.
I like it, and yeah, that's definitely something needed. That's as the quote goes, "Don't trust but verify," right? Because like so many people just BS on job applications and the different skills that they have just to get their foot through the door, and then once they get the job, like you realize, wow, like they actually don't have all these skills that they talked about. Whereas in this new world, you don't like it. There is no bullshitting. It's like you either have it or you don't. If you have it, you can prove it. There's my badge. Or if you don't, you don't. And it also saves a lot of time, especially for recruiters and like future when you're looking for talent. Like you can spend a lot of time like interviewing people and trying to figure out who should we hire for a project, who should we not, are they a right fit? So it streamlines the process in many ways.
Yeah. I would maybe chip in and say, like, I mean, I am generally very excited about Nostra, but I think that it's definitely still a very Wild West place, right? In
Of
terms
course.
of getting to the point where there's a lot of experimentation, which I think is also a very valuable and good thing. And I am going to segue to one of the other projects that I
Sure,
think
sure.
maybe not directly Nostr, but one of the things that I've been noticing since I've been sort of in the space more or less full time is, there is definitely difficulty building a business on Bitcoin. And I'm talking about, I mean, there's plenty of successful Bitcoin related businesses, right? But if you're trying to
Mm.
build a business on the Bitcoin standard or, a self-sustainable business, I think that's very challenging at the moment, and I would say the crypto space, right? And, I understand that it's not what we aspire to, but it has a lot of business activity where Bitcoin doesn't seem to have that much business activity. I think there's a lot of different reasons for that, and I do think it's a very interesting subject. But one of the projects we're working on actually is trying to address that problem, and that is
Okay.
Angor, right?
Okay.
um, and Angor, I am very excited about Angor. I think it's an interesting, very interesting project. Not directly, it's not Nostr first, although it has a very deep integration with Nostr, but it's actually a specification for the base layer of Bitcoin that
Mm.
allows people to encode information about a project, like let's say a business. I have a business and I'm a founder, and so you can
Hmm.
encode that information into a Bitcoin transaction using Taproot, and other people can then invest in your project. And again, it's using Taproot, so the investments are time locked. Um,
Mm.
the reason they're time locked is because Anger is trying to address the problem that people have noticed in the VC world and in the crypto world, for example, where founders are given investment up front, and that sort of disincentivizes them to actually deliver results, right? So Angar included this feature that you can actually time lock, and it's sort of like timed release of
Mm.
investments to the founder. And on top of that, investors also can actually withdraw their investments. So it's almost like a utility, right? It's in the base layer. We developed an indexer so that we can identify those transactions and present information to the user using mempool with fork mempool. But I think that sort of thing, we need these utilities that would really jumpstart business activity on Bitcoin, and might not be base layer, maybe it's eCash, I don't know, maybe Lightning or something else. But I think ability to conduct business on Bitcoin and now Nostr is an urgent task. It's an urgent task.
100%, and not just like building on Bitcoin, but it's also like the funding aspect, which you mentioned. Like this is a very nice concept. I've come across Anger on Nostr, but I didn't like do too much grilling. I saw something like with VC investment, but I didn't go further down. I didn't see the whole timestamp lock-in, using Taproot, which actually sounds like really good, because I totally agree. I've heard of cases where a team goes out, raises funds, and then doesn't work out, and then they just run off with the money. In this case, you kind of need to deliver the project, and if you aren't delivering, then essentially the investors can pull the money back, and you slowly in increments get whatever is predefined and pre-agreed on, which I think is a very nice concept. And the whole financing a project, may that be like a business, Bitcoin business, or even Nostr, which is even more niche, it's super hard because today I guess most of like the projects are getting grants, may that be OpenSats or like other like grantees. Do you have like any thoughts of like possible solutions of how these like freedom tech projects could self-sustain themselves? Because I think that's also like a big challenge of today. And how do you like build a team? How can you finance all of that without having like some sustainable stream of income to monetize? Because you kind of want to give things for free, especially in open source, but then you still got bills to pay. You can't pay your bills with a FOSS certificate, right?
From
What's your take on that, guys?
from
Endo,
experience, yeah, I always I'm the advocate of failing fast. So you basically build something quickly and validate. And actually, like with NostrDev, we're actually positioned to offer such solutions that within literally a couple of weeks we could come with some very rough proof of concept things. So you wouldn't need a necessarily massive budget to get some product to market and to start testing it, see what people think, which is a good place for you to start actually raising money to fund it, or to validate your idea and maybe say okay, I need to do some things differently.
Yeah.
what I would add to this though is that the raw reality I think of a lot of current Nostra projects is, as Gigi mentioned, is they're funded by either grants or self-funded, and
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen. I mean, I don't know every single project, of course, but I think if there are any, they're an extreme minority that actually are making regular sustainable profit, right? And then the conversation usually goes in the direction, well, there's donations, grants, and that is good, yeah. And perhaps there is a difference between a business and a utility, right? We
Mm.
have a business built, say, on the Bitcoin standard, and then a utility that should kind of be the backbone of it's like a public utility. As Endo said, I mean, in terms of, it's still possible to create a little app relatively cheaply and fast. That's true. But I would say where it's maybe unresolved is a bit more unresolved is the different business sustainable use cases,
Mm.
and how to how to make it sustainable. I think it's an open question, really.
Yeah.
Another example of a project we're working on is the Bitcoin art clock, which is an interesting one because it basically allows you to generate AI art that is corresponding to blocks, to Bitcoin blocks. We're using open timestamps. And basically, it's a cute thing. I think, some people like, if you're, say, you're becoming a father and you want to create some memorable piece of art associated to the block of your child when your child was born, you can very easily generate that and mint that for a reasonable amount of sats. So those things are happening, and I'm really glad that they are, because there are different kinds of personalities, and there are people who are more visual, for example. They appreciate art, and maybe having an art associated to a block height, and understanding that okay, there's so many blocks, every 10 minutes there's a new piece created. It helps with education, and it's tangible as well, right?
Hmm. That's amazing. What did you mention? What's the project called?
It's called Bitcoin Art Clock.
Bitcoin art clock. I like that a lot because I also have like an artistic background of my own, and I love Bitcoin art. So like anything to do with Bitcoin and art, I'm a big proponent of. So I'll definitely have to check out this this project. Yeah, just to kind of circle back to the sustainable funding of projects. Even to a certain extent, we're limited on how many grants even like OpenSats can be giving, because there's more and more projects that are being built. You can't be, giving monthly grants to like hundreds or even thousands of projects. And then it's kind of like this game of who do we fund? And some projects which really have a really good idea, a really good team behind it, spend a lot of time and dedication on it, they're not getting funded. So once again, it goes back to this question, like how, like, personally, apart from my favorite Nostr client, which is Primal, I got to meet the team in BTC Prague last year, and now that Primal 2.0 came out, I kind of left Amethyst, and Damas, I wasn't even on it because I wasn't on iOS. I transitioned to Android since BTC Prague. But like Primal to me is like such a good client, and they are essentially, in my eyes, at least the first ones that introduced this Primal. What is it called? Premium, I think it's called, where you can like pay like a monthly fee to get extra options. They were very thankful enough. I've got my Primal OG status on it, so they gave me the 6 months. So I'm kind of testing it out. But definitely from next summer, I will be paying for that, because like the user experience and like all this market feed and the customization on it, and it feels like a premium app. Like nothing is not working anymore, at least so far. It like feels like they've done a lot, and it's nice that they're introducing. It's not like a must that you need to pay to be a premium member, but if you want to have extra features and if you want to, kind of have the best of the product, you pay a certain amount. I don't know what they're going to charge, $5 or $6 a month, more or less what X is charging. And to me, that was kind of like the uniqueness of like compared to other, because I haven't come across any clients where you need to pay like a monthly subscription for a sort of thing. From your experience, guys, do you have any projects which also have this concept of like a free open use case to everybody, but if you want like some extra services or like a paid option in that? Or are Primal like one of the niche guys which are offering this, which has been introduced?
I think it's the first one that I came across as well, offering this kind of subscription-based model and financing through for fiat effectively. And you're right, it's a great product. It's really slick. It's a massive improvement on top of the first version of Primal. I've got my OG status as well. I'm using that, so I'm super
Nice.
keen. And I think they're super smart because they integrated the wallet within the app, and like I don't know if you tried buying Sats to your wallet. If you have a card, even on iOS, if you have a credit card connected, it's
Do it
just
with Apple Pay, right?
Apple Pay, yeah, Apple Pay, double
Yeah.
tap, boom, you get Sats in your account, and they make money from commission, fair enough, but the easiness to buy it is just like I didn't see anything simpler than that.
It's I can't recall who was the guest on the podcast. It was a couple of weeks ago, but we discussed how he said like how he orange pills now people. He just gets them to like create a Primal account, and just from there, bam, like you get funded, you can send, receive, you can interact. So instead of going through this whole let's set up a seed phrase and let's do the first transaction and go to an exchange and get some sat, he was like, man, like with Primal, I'm orange/purple seeding just like all the way with Primal, because as you said, like it's so easy with having an in wallet. Yeah, it's not ideal to like those like privacy maximalists. They're like, oh no, like Primal's partnered with Strike and you need to do a KYC. But then again, like most people still have a bank account. If I give them a picture of my ID and a selfie, it's not the end of the world. Like I'm not giving them my Bitcoin seed phrase. Like it's convenient, and to most people to try out at least, it's a small price to pay for like the ease of use. And I think we need more and more clients where it's like easy for the what I call pre-coiners to just enter and start using it instead of doing it very complex and very tedious and like making it all like overcomplicated. So I think that's a big aspect that developers should focus on, building like very easy to use apps to get people to adopt them.
To be fair, I would say that there's been quite a lot of improvement in that area, and that includes different Nostra logins and, as Endo mentioned, an extension, which is sort of a kind of MetaMask-like experience, for people who know that. So I think that there's definitely a lot of energy going into that, into making it a bit more user friendly. Um, having said that, I think it's still well, yeah, what I wanted to also mention is that I totally agree with the track team where you said no coiner or pre-coiner, but also I mean, and I'll make this point, but again, maybe not everybody agrees. You know, it even though
And that's fine.
Bitcoin is native to Nostr, it doesn't actually
Yeah.
need to be Bitcoin, right? For example, I know that the Monero community has been starting to build something on Nostr. You know, and Nostr should be, if it wants to be that censorship-resistant social media, or maybe social identity layer, right? It's healthy, I think, to have you know, and I would say it's a sign of health that they're not just like other like Monero, actually people who are not interested in Bitcoin, for example, right? It has some population like that, you know, Edward Snowden and sort of freedom of speech advocates. Um, but yeah, it's a fairly slow process.
It's good though. You know, I actually this is the first time I hear about the Monero community looking to build things on Nostr. Like, I thought like all clients were associated, you know, with zapping and utilizing, you know, BTC. But actually, it's good because you know the Monero community is very strong, and it shouldn't isolate either. Like, you're a Nostr if you're a Bitcoiner. If you're not, like, we don't want you here. Like, it's freedom tech. Who are we to tell people what to use? If you want to be using Polygon and all these shitcoins, go ahead and do it. Not to all the listeners to clarify, I don't think Monero is a shitcoin. I have a lot of respect for Monero, but like, we shouldn't be restricting other, you know, people to build in it. That's the whole beauty of it, that it is open source and whoever can build. And I think if more alternative communities build on Nostr, we're only winning again because we're spreading essentially this protocol to a wider audience.
Yeah. Well, I would add that Bitcoin and zapping is sort of native to Nostr, right? It's in the protocol specification. But I also see a future. Another thing that's now native or almost native to Nostr is eCash, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple of proposals that tie it closely with relays, so you can store your proofs on relays, and that's actually what SatShoot I think is utilizing, that Endo mentioned. Um, and what I think is particularly interesting about it is eCash is actually currency agnostic, right? You know, it could. And I'm not pushing the line that it shouldn't be Bitcoin, but what I'm saying is, again, I think for Nostr to succeed, it shouldn't be just social media for Bitcoiners, right?
Yeah.
That's where I'm getting at. And so, you know, with eCash, you could have Bitcoin backed USDT, or not USDT, but stablecoin, right? It's still
Yeah.
ultimately Bitcoin backed. It's like Bitcoin powered economy, which is what I care about quite deeply. But it, you know, you can transfer dollar denominated value via Nostr to someone else and then redeem it via an eCash mint, which again makes it more open to different use cases. I think, you know, not just purely Bitcoin use case.
Yeah, I've seen the other day on Nostr, I think Kale, he posted like a screenshot of like how many projects on Nostr are utilizing eCash, and I was like, oh my god, like it was a lot. Like, and there was like different sectors of like different regions, so it's like so much getting built. Pre last summer in BTC Prague, like I was like, I hardly heard of eCash, and here we are like 6-7 months now, and there's so many things, you know, being utilizing eCash. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in 2025. Are you guys bullish on eCash?
You guys, what do you think about eCash? Yeah.
So I wrote actually an article about eCash a few days ago, and you know, just a little bit in the spirit of what's coming in the U.S. about, you know, the new administration coming in, President Trump, the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, and the things that he said at Bitcoin Nashville, I think, where he said that, you know, he wants all Bitcoin to be mined, minted, and made in the USA. And you know, it sounds great, yada yada yada, but And I don't really believe that Trump understands what it means to mine Bitcoin. But at the same time, I started questioning maybe his advisors, his cabinets, maybe given the fact that he already mentioned kind of that Bitcoin could be used to help with the covering the national
The
debt.
debt.
And the fact that he is talking about minting Bitcoin in the US. Like, imagine a scenario where all of a sudden, okay, ETFs are the low-hanging fruit, right? Like, all they need to do is like one executive order, say, okay, Mr. Larry Fink, you cannot sell your Bitcoin to anybody else other than US Treasury. That's a no-brainer. And then imagine a scenario where, for example, all the publicly traded companies that are the miners, that they are temporarily not allowed to distribute the Bitcoin that they mine, but they, like, if you're using hosted mining, the miner becomes a mint, and they can distribute the equivalent of eCash. So the bare asset stays with the miner, is being controlled by the miner by law, for example, because that's quite easy to do. And the users are using eCash because it's still tied to Bitcoin. You can still trade it within USA. KYC. It's you cannot conjoin it. Whatever. It's pretty. I mean, okay, eCash is meant to be private, but there are ways where they could basically turn it into a shitcoin. Sorry. Yeah.
Into a CBDC.
I mean, it's not impossible. Like, it's a tool. It's a powerful tool, and it helps a lot. But it could also be used in a way that wouldn't be very friendly.
Well, I agree. I think I would just add to this. I think that the eCash is, in my mind, it's more of a kind of a local use case, right? Like, it's not partially because of its inherent centralization. In my mind, it's actually can be part of that tech stack I described, where we have Relay and we have this Blossom drive, right? And then maybe an app can also have its own mint or something like that, right? Or a conference can have its own mint. And in that sense, it provides that privacy and also improved UX, because there's no transaction time. You don't need connect a lot of things. So in that sense, it's a very, very powerful user experience, I think.
And definitely the privacy aspect, which a lot of Bitcoiners, they're unhappy. Like the privacy is very poor on the Bitcoin, especially on the layer on the main chain. Like, everything is tracked, and by a fact of, as you said, an example of a conference or somewhere like a community based thing. Go in and getting your mint and essentially spending whatever you want, and then exiting out, exchanging your basically exiting out of it. You kind of still get to utilize all the ease of transaction and utility without leaving any traces. So I also think, like, I don't see a national wide eCash mint where like there's like hundreds of thousands of people. Also, like, the implications of a rug pull on that. Imagine, like, because like, what if the custodian just like closes shop and leaves? That would be pretty insane. And I've heard a lot of examples. I personally haven't used it that much, but I heard a lot of examples of custodials in different federations just like closing up. I don't know what the reasons were, but that's like also, I don't know, not too healthy. But it's a trade-off, right? You can't have full privacy and not kind of going down a custodial solution. So it's kind of, you need to weigh out, and also how much you expose yourself. If you lose like $10, no biggie. But if you lose like 0.1, like 10 million sats, it's like heart attack, kind of, it's also on that level of how much exposure you have.
You got to be careful how much you put on like a Nostr eCash wallet. Yeah.
Cool.
At least right now.
Early days. Well, yeah, I totally agree. Like, the Bitcoin is the safest in your cold storage. So yeah, I mean, just to add like my final like 2 cents, like I'm not pro or against eCash. I have nothing bad to say, but like my personal stance is like I don't like custodial anything. And to be honest, I'm not too scared about leaving my footprint on the on-chain. I know some people will disagree with me because it's all about like, you know, full sovereignty and you should be private. But I mean, at the end of the day, I highly doubt I'm of any interest to Chainalysis or any tracking, you know, institution. Even if they track it, like fantastic, you see what I spent. But like to me, it's not a big trade-off compared to storing it somewhere, especially if it's a substantial amount on a custodial solution. And I'm worrying, am I going to get rugged? Am I not? So then again, it's still early days. Maybe my mind next year will switch. So I'm not in any way disadvising people not to play around with eCash and try it out. Go all for it. But personally, myself, I'm still kind of on the sidelines and just following what's happening in the space. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen next year. And, you know, just to add to Endo, what you mentioned with Trump and, you know, kind of perhaps new laws that could come out where there will be different institutions doing mints. That kind of reminded me of back in the day, pre-federal banking in US, like different states, they had like their own banks had their own banknotes. So like they essentially minted their own currency. And when you would come there, you would basically using in their little town, you'd be using their own. And this was discussed by Jeff Booth, actually. The other day I was listening to, it was either back on the what Bitcoin did that came back to life, or I think it was that one, Jeff Booth, on what Bitcoin did with Danny Knowles. He was discussing how pre-federal banking, like U.S. states, they had like each bank had their own like currency, their own mint, you know. And I was like, holy shit, like that reminds me a lot of like what's happening now with Dcash. So who knows what will happen out of it? We might retract back to history. As I say, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. But it's yet to see. But on the topic of Trump, I'm so bullish that the orange man is going into office. Probably by the time this episode is going to go live, it's going to be about maybe a week prior, or even he's already in the White House. And I think it's going to be really positive because we're like the administration switching from choke point 2.0 to, you know, let's have all the mining, all the Bitcoin central of the world will be in the US, and especially the cabinet that surround them. I mean, like more of them, more than half of them are not just Bitcoiners, they hold their own Bitcoin. So it's like, talk about like the right people to be whispering into your ears. I'm not of a belief that Trump has any idea how Bitcoin works, but he just realizes this is not anymore like if or not. It's like we need to work with this. And his cabinet, I think, it's going to open up a lot of days. So I think it's more bullish than negative with Trump and everything that's going to happen next year in the next 4 years. What's your guys' take?
Well, I think, you know, this is just the beginning, because I think the Russian Duma, like last week, announced that they would be creating a national
Strategic
Bitcoin
reserve,
as
yeah.
well. So, you know, that's you have US, you have Russia, and, you know, like there's rumors that China is going to unban Bitcoin mining. And if they
There's been a
for
lot
sure,
of other countries like Poland, Slovenia. You know, there's a lot of EU countries that are also
Brazil,
discussing. They're
yeah.
not passing anything. Yeah. So like,
So, you know, I think that 2025 will be all about, you know, how important strategically Bitcoin is. And yeah, you know, quoting Max Kaiser, the global hash war is on.
it is.
I would add to this that, yeah, I mean, I agree that things are looking up for, I guess, for Bitcoin, but I would also say that there's one caution for that, is that, I mean, it's great that the governments are getting Bitcoin, right? And it's always been part of the, I guess, perfect roadmap, right, for sort of adoption. But it's also important to keep Bitcoin as a kind of as peer-to-peer digital
Freedom
cash,
tool.
right? Because I think without that part of Bitcoin, if it's just a storage of storage of value, sorry, it actually loses that potency, you know. So I think we need both, and you know, which is why places like Madeira are you know are great for that, but more and more places around the world, I suppose. But yeah, that's my only
I'm
slight
also
worry.
like to join in, and I wouldn't call it a worry, but like to me also, like I went super down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and what I loved was the separation between money and state. And now we're in this kind of position where it's like the state is like it's given its blessing and it wants the Bitcoin to come in, and it's kind of like everybody's cheering it. But it's like, hey guys, we were fighting the state, we want to kill the system, but now the system's adopting it. But there is a positive thing that people are maybe forgetting, that like 75 to 80% of all Bitcoin ever mined is owned by retail, by plebs, right? And early adopters. So the government's adopting it. They're kind of entering the game like towards the end, if you could say so. I mean, and like there's much less Bitcoin that's going to be mined from here going forward. So if anything, like they're going to be pumping our bags super hard that like more people will be able to leave the system and focus on their own projects and have that more freedom of time. And I think if nation states start like buying strategically continuously, in a sense, I don't know if that's going to sound hypocritical, but it is kind of healthier for Bitcoin cycles where we have like a bear market. Everyone, well, not everyone, but like people buy in, we go to the peak, and then like the whales just dump on retail, and then we have like an 80% retraction now going forward into 2025 bull market. Like if all these institutions, without even mentioning the BlackRocks, the MicroStrategies of the world, these guys are not waiting for a peak price to exit. These guys are just stacking more no matter what the price is every month. Some cases, MicroStrategy every week, just adding thousands of Bitcoin. Like, I don't know what's the take. We'll see, but I don't see like an 80% correction happening next time. I might be totally wrong and it's bogus, and we will have an 80% correction. If we do fantastic, I'm all for buying sats on a discount. But inside of me, I kind of think we're going to go to this parabolic move that we saw like in the early days where like Bitcoin went into like 50x and above. And from there, it's like a small, maybe 20-30% correction, and then sideways and slowly just going higher and higher and higher. And like this 1 million Bitcoin, I think people don't realize how soon that's going to come. This is not like by 2030. Like we could get to 1 million Bitcoin real fast, and we're not going to get 200K in 6 months.
You're bullish to say the least. I mean,
I'm speaking my thoughts. You know, this is non-financial advice, but I'm just speaking what I've been noticing, what I've been reading, what I've been following, what I've been studying. Like, I don't want to give the cliche, this time is different, but sorry for cursing, fuck me. Like, we have like huge fucking billion-dollar companies and nation states talking about it. This is not like a whale coming in, buying the low and selling the high. Like, there's a lot of stuff happening, good or bad. So
I think
it's going to be a hell of a year next year.
I completely agree. I'm also super bullish, and I think that the fact that Bitcoin is so reckless, the time chain doesn't stop, and TikTok next block, and we're gonna have another halving and another and another, and by the seventh halving, 99.9% of Bitcoin will have been mined. That means that basically we have a very short window, like relatively short window of or less than around 10 years. To stack sats, and for like all those countries, they are fighting for that 5%. So if you're into Bitcoin already, congratulations, you made it. If you're new to Bitcoin, it is not too late to start stacking. Your currency that you used to buy bread is going to devalue, and Bitcoin will raise in price. So yeah.
You said an excellent point, and I'll let Eugene. I saw Eugene's already thinking in his mind, I read his mind. He's like, I don't own enough Bitcoin. Like, I need to stack more Bitcoin. But I just wanted to chip in with the halving thing. That's right. Like, after the seventh halving, like 99% already today, like 96.5% is already mined. And people forget that like there's 32 halvings programmed in the Bitcoin protocol, and we only had the fourth one. And people are like, oh my god, like I'm too late to Bitcoin. It's 100 or 150K, whatever it is. It's irrelevant in fiat monetary terms. Like, it's going to be so scarce in the future that like I really see in like 15-20 years time, like people will have like like monthly salary of like 500, 1,000 sats, which we're like just zapping today with like one click, not even thinking about it. Like, hey man, there's 1,000 zaps, like it's gonna get super scarce. And the last kind of thing I want to drop on the mining aspect, which people forget, that like for the last 30 years, so from 2100 to 2140, when the last sat, not Bitcoin, last sat is estimated to be mined, 30 or like 35 years, the whole world will be mining one single Bitcoin, which today, yeah, it might cost $100,000. But imagine in the future, 30 years, that's nearly like my lifetime, all mining around the world will be mining one single Bitcoin. And today, it's still super cheap relatively if you think about it. So yeah, I'll finish my bullish rant on that one. Eugene?
No, I really enjoy listening to the bullish rants, to be honest. I am bullish. I'm bullish, but I do think all of that will probably happen if Bitcoin is not hijacked. Right? That's my only thing, because I think that with all the institutional adoption and country and nation state adoption, the block size war, yeah.
That's what I'm reading now, to be honest, just to jump in. Like, I don't think after what
That's
we've seen
great,
with the
yeah.
block size war, it showed, and I don't know if you guys read it, but I definitely shout out to everybody listening, definitely get a copy of the block size wars, because like what happened in 2017, how it tried to get hijacked with the big blockers, and we prevailed as the small blockers. Doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you own. Maybe you have a different stance, Eugene, but like, I don't know. I think it's going to be super hard to hijack Bitcoin. Anyone that tried to hijack Bitcoin essentially go wrecked. If we look what happened to Sam Bankman-Fried or Roger Ver, who's essentially potentially facing a lifetime prison now. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I
suppose
hope I'm not in the wrong.
What I mean by hijacking is precisely shaping the narrative of Bitcoin as just storage of value, right? Or even like
digital gold, basically.
Like, yeah, digital gold asset storage, right? Tokenization, the base layer will be on Bitcoin, something like that, right? I think it needs to be alive among people as digital cash. That's what I mean. So if you reduce its utility,
agreed,
it might temporarily, or in a short term, spike, as sort of a kind of a safe asset now, right? For these very particular business cases. But I think in a long term, it's not going to work as money, and it's not going to work certainly as freedom money. Maybe it'll work as slavery money. Yeah, but that would mean that its actual value will not hold, right? So I think it has to have that freedom, rebellious streak technically alive and practically alive around the world for it to maintain its value. Or it's going to be hollowed out. And I mean, I don't want to compare Bitcoin to Ethereum, but there's so many good examples where you can see how potentially interesting, maybe not revolutionary like Bitcoin, but interesting ideas get hollowed out and really turn into a shell of what it used to be. So that's my only concern about the hyper bullish narrative.
I like it. I always like hearing other sides of the coin, and nobody knows who's right. We will all see in time. We have a great saying, a Serbian proverb. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not saying that that's going to happen. It's more like sometimes I just think so much celebration going on, and I'm like, we still have to stay vigilant and just
the fight is still on.
Yeah, kind of like that. It's the same in business and it's the same in life. I think people sometimes can get too ecstatic about the sort of the price.
Too much hopium in the gas mask, going like.
Yeah, but I'm happy about it. But yeah.
I see. Endo, you want to chip in on anything on this, or you want me? I've got one more thing to kind of lined up that I wanted to run past you guys.
No, I think Eugene has a point. Like we're seeing, we've got our orange glasses and we see everything like only bullish signs, only signals. So it's good to kind of have something that makes you balanced out a little bit, but it's for me. I'm really struggling to find any negatives.
It's hard to keep the feet on the ground, but it's important to keep them grounded.
Exactly.
I totally agree.
I call it adversarial thinking. I think Bitcoin has built an adversarial thinking, and there's technical aspect of that, but there's now, I think, more and more kind of socio-political, economic aspect of that as well. So it's nothing more than that. I'm not predicting it. I'm just putting it out there.
No, and I respect that. It's not interesting having a conversation when everybody kind of has the same thought, and it's just like, yeah. Like, I agree. It's nice to have like different sides of the coin, and as I mentioned, like we have a Serbian proverb which goes by, "We will see," said the blind man. We basically, nobody knows what's happening. We will see in time what will happen out of it. And that's the beauty of it. And whatever happens, what's the most beautiful part about it is whatever we choose and the actions we take today. So instead of just sitting on the sidelines and like saying, "Oh, like, let's hope for the best," like take the action, like contribute, start like building, be the change that you want to see in the world instead of just hoping on other people and praying for it. Like, do your little deed. And if each one of us does our little deed, we will succeed in this world that we want to build a true, tech-free, prosperous, self-sovereign nations, individuals, which we all want to be, essentially living in. So, you know, I want to leave it on a positive note, with some pinch of salt that there's a lot of work still to get done. So don't be celebrating yet. You can pop your champagne for the 100K, but until we do bigger things, keep those bottles in the fridge, waiting for a bigger celebration.
Yeah, I would add to this, that it's it's convenient to use your Apple Pay in your phone and or your watch, or and with Bitcoin it's not that easy, and it's very similar with Nostr. Like it's very easy to use WhatsApp or Instagram or Facebook to communicate and to do all the things socially. But just like with fiat money, the money in the bank is not your
Not
money,
your
and
money.
it's not your money, and it's, well, some would argue it's not yours, and it's not money.
True,
The,
true,
the
true.
same thing applies to Nostr and the data and your digital footprint. So in all those Web2 applications, you are the product. All the data you feed
Yep.
to the big corporate machines, that's that doesn't belong to you. Like at any point, you can be cut off, you can be cancelled from any platform, and that's where Nostr comes in place. In Nostr, you own your data; nobody can take it away from you.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to say, like, yeah, maybe Apple Pay is convenient and all these apps are convenient until your card is blocked or your account is frozen and you're just deplatformed. And then suddenly you've lost all those, how much energy, time, and effort you've spent over the years building up your profile or building up your bank account. And then it's just like poof, and it's gone, which is not something that can be, your Bitcoin can be confiscated. Your Nostr profile, all your data, all your notes and data that you put there can't just be confiscated. Even if a client blocks you, no problem. You can open any other client, log in with your NSEC, and bam, you have all your followers. All the people you're following and followers, and all of the creative data that you put up on the protocol, which I kind of see as Bitcoin is this decentralized money and Nostr is decentralized data, which we needed for a long time, where these big mega corporations, the Metas of the world and Googles, they're essentially, as you said, Endo, you are the product. If you're not paying for a product, then you are the product, which especially Gen Zs, it's a hard concept for them to realize. It's all like, oh, it's just normal. I like everything's free online. But then it's like, hey guys, like it's free because you are feeding the beast and you're essentially just being bombarded by ads and all these stuff. So it's interesting that we're kind of paralleling out of the system of being influenced what to do to more you influencing over what you want to do, which is much more healthier.
Yeah, and to the same point, like I was showing to my friends, making a Bitcoin transaction and sending money from centralized exchange to their cold wallet, and there's a transaction fee, and they say
Yeah.
that's a lot. Why do I have to pay that? There's like $12 that I have to pay. Wow, that is a lot of money. It's like, well, yeah, that's the cost of sovereign banking and sovereign money.
But that's
There's
an
no,
exchange. That's not if you're doing a Sparrow wallet to a Blue wallet. I
yeah.
was just actually earlier today, just to give this example, I was showing my mom how to basically air gapped sign transaction from Sparrow wallet with a seed sign. And my mom's like turning 70 next year. And she was like, WTF, like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, and you see, and you go, bam, and I scan this QR code, and I flip around, and I scan it here and here, and I was like, boom, and then we broadcast the transaction, and then she's like, and where is it? And I'm like, boop, and then we go to the mempool, and she's like, and what is here? And I'm like, well, now you see all these transactions, but I'm like, look, I scroll down, I'm like, look, you see all these live transactions happening? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, look, let's find like one big one. And like there was like one for like $30,000, like 0.3 Bitcoin was being transferred. And I went to click and I didn't. And then another one, it's refreshed and it was 13.4 Bitcoin, basically, well, like over $3.4 million being sent that moment. And I click on it and I'm like, look, let me show you the fee. And the fee was like 7.3 sats per VByte. And he basically paid $1.13 to transfer $1.3 million. And she's like, what? She's like, in banking world, you'd spend like thousands of dollars for that. And it's like, and it's instant. And while we were watching, like the block cleared and I'm like, boom, and the money's at the end point. And she's like, this stuff's amazing, it's just like when you show these things to people, they're like, yeah, it might seem a little bit overwhelming, but then at the same time, it's just like, it's liberating, if that makes sense. It's like you're not depending on no middle institution, no one asking you for your proof of funds, AML, this, that. It's just like you have full control of your money, which is how banking used to be. You would deposit 50K into your bank account. Nobody would ask you where you got that money from. You wanted to pull out 50K in cash, you would come pull it out in 50K. Today, you can't even pull out 5,000 euro, $5,000 or 5,000 whatever. You need to prove where you're going to go spend it, how you're going to spend it. Are you mentally stable today? Like, have you taken your meds? It's like, what the fuck? Like, all these questions, like, give me my money. And then going back to what Endo said, the banks, it's not your money. And it's just, it's a crazy world we live in. And I don't know what I would do without Bitcoin. It would be pretty miserable living just to be slaving away in a fiat system, which is not in a good shape. And I think times are going to get harder and harder. So the sooner, moral of my story is, the sooner you leap onto a Bitcoin standard, you don't have to be fully living on a Bitcoin standard, but the sooner you start stacking sats, the more freer you will be by the day. So don't get disencouraged by seeing the fiat prices, may that be 100, 150, 200K. Just make sure to stack some. If you don't want to be stacking, what we spoke in the beginning, give a service, sell a product, earn sats, which essentially is much better than sending it in fiat currencies. Or you have a third option, go into mining. But if you're yet to stack sats, I think mining is a little bit too complex. So we can leave that for another segment of your life. But yeah, guys, I guess I think more or less we covered a lot of things. I don't want to go too much. We've already spoken about loads of things on this episode. For sure, we can have another discussion in the future and bring you on, and maybe we could bring on some other people from the Nostr space that are building stuff, and we can have a discussion, like a round table about the progress and everything that's getting built, because things are happening so fast that if we have another conversation in 6 months' time, there may be so many new things that are on the horizon. But where can we send our listeners to learn more about NostrDev and follow your guys' work?
So NostrDev has a website. I believe it's just NostrDev.com. That's where you'll see some testimonials, our portfolio, stuff like that. And for personal stuff, I have a Nostra account, which I can share.
It would be ironical if you didn't. We'll have it in the show notes, but yeah, it'd be weird if you're like, I'm building on Nostr, but find me on X. It's kind of like
I'm not a very big social media user, but I am on Nostr.
Amazing. And yourself, Endo?
Endo at primal.net. You'll find me there.
Fellow primal pleb accepted. Like I love when I see like an @primal URL lightning address. I'm like, oh, it feels like we're in the same like high school type of thing. But yeah, guys, thanks again for coming on. It's been a real pleasure speaking and learning more about the amazing things that you're building, learning some new things about Nostr that I didn't know myself. So thank you for sharing that with me and the listeners. And yeah, guys, I wish you all the best of luck with everything you're building on. You're doing an amazing job. And everybody that's listening, if you have an idea that you think would be viable and something new that could be work in the space, I'm sure the guys at Nostr, Dev, Eugene, Endo, and the team would be happy to jump on a discovery call, see if it makes sense. And who knows, maybe you'll build the next Primal 3.0, who knows, you never know until you try. But thanks again, guys. And I look forward to speaking to you in the future. And if you ever need anything, as I mentioned before, feel free to reach out to Gigi. Always happy to help any way I can.
That was awesome. Thanks, man. Speak to you
Speak soon.
Speak to you later.
Thank you so much. Take care. All the best.
I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did recording it. I would really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, and share this episode to help this podcast grow. Thanks for supporting the show, and until next time, stay safe and stack sats.